Welcome, everybody. Thank you for staying up late here on the East Coast or wherever you are. Appreciate you joining. Grateful to you. And we're going to talk about the debate. And we're also going to look at some polling numbers that have come out today and a few things with Donald Trump. But we'll talk mostly about the interview. If you're watching on YouTube and you're new, welcome. If you're going to engage in the chat, either on YouTube or here on Two-Way, this is a platform civility, peace, love, and understanding. Often the chat deviates that a lot more than what happens here. But please try to respect what we're trying to do here, which is to represent all points of view. This is not just a platform for centrists, moderates, and independents, although we welcome them here. It's for everybody. And if you hear somebody saying something you strongly disagree with, use that as a learning opportunity rather than an opportunity for hate or derision. I'm going to tell you what I thought about tonight, and then I think we'll save the polling stuff and some of the other issues for the back half, but we do have some polling stuff and some information about a poll we're going to have here tomorrow from Pennsylvania. But I'll tell you what I thought about the interview. And I have to be honest, even though I've known Dana Bash for a long time, I thought that with the possible exception of her questions about fracking, I thought that the interview was very weak in terms of the question asked. A lot of softball questions. And even the questions on topics that were important to cover. I don't think she asked sharp questions to begin with. When she did ask follow-ups, I don't think the follow-ups yielded anything. So my main view of this is it's a non-event because the questions were not the right questions to ask the right way. So we'll talk about the interview for sure, and I'm eager to hear what you all thought about it. But I don't think there was much to it. The basic view I've heard from Democrats, which I agree with, was she didn't screw up anything, but we didn't learn much of anything either. And so if the point was to survive the interview without making much news, aided and abetted by the weak questions, she succeeded. If the point was to give people a better sense of how she governed, I don't think she succeeded. I want to read you a text I got from a Republican who's he's a Trump supporter, but not a huge Trump fan. And a very smart, experienced person in presidential politics. This says what he wrote about the interview. This is an hour of hagiography, a televised worship service of Kamala the goddess. Red America will see clips and be energized like the Energizer Bunny. I don't disagree with that. I really am almost stunned at the degree to which the entire interview was taken over with mostly topics that I don't think were germane. And again, when she was on the right topics, I don't think the questions yielded very much. From a positive point of view, the vice president held it together. She was not frazzled or flustered. She didn't laugh inappropriately at things. She didn't seem to be knocked off by anything. She seemed like she was anticipating every one of the questions. I thought she, maybe most importantly, she did have some moments that were less good, but there was nothing iconic. There was nothing that I think you could show a normal person on social media or on a morning show that people would say was a memorably bad moment that was understandable. I thought she was warm and given plenty of opportunities to humanize herself. Did it quite well. I thought the presence of Governor Walz did not, the sort of the notion that she was going to be overshadowed or he was there to protect her. I don't think there were any moments that kind of put that in sharp relief. I think that was good for her. On the negative side, I don't understand why she looked down so much rather than at the interviewer. I thought she looked very tired. One implication of choosing CNN is you got a basic cable level of lighting, hair, makeup, and staging. It didn't look the way it would have if she'd gone with ABC or NBC, and I think that doesn't put her in the best light, and that's not great for any candidate. And just the reality of the world we live in. It's not great for a female candidate in particular. So I think that wasn't great. And then obviously there's moments of word salad, particularly the first clip they released. Probably the most negative thing CNN did for her, besides the lighting and hair and makeup, was release that clip first, because I think the clip they released this afternoon was her worst moment in talking about fracking and her values. I didn't make up a big list of questions beforehand that I would have asked. I just didn't feel like doing it for a variety of reasons. in the wake of this, I could come up with 30 off the top of my head that I would find in terms of the subject matter, how they phrase them, and how to approach follow-ups that I would think would be better than what was there. And I'm terribly disappointed, not just because of my sort of journalistic instincts, but for the country. I don't know how many more interviews she's going to do, but to me, this was just an extraordinary waste of an opportunity. It doesn't have to be hostile or argumentative or contentious or gotcha, but it should have been an opportunity to really make her give her the opportunity under hard questioning and follow-ups to explain herself to the American people in this unprecedented situation. And again, even the questions to Governor Walz about some of the issues where he's been less than truthful, or people in his behalf have been less than truthful. I found the whole thing to be a waste of time. I don't think we learned anything, and I think she benefited quite a bit from the soft treatment that she got. So that's my view. I think what I want to do is I want to go through everybody who's currently got your hand up. I'm just going to literally go through one by one. And I've asked you all to be disciplined here. No more than 30 seconds, and less if you can do it. Just your top line. I'll come back to some of you for a longer conversation to have people tell me at some length what you thought. But I want to start by bringing in my colleague from the morning meeting, Sean Spicer. And I know Sean got on a little bit late and missed some of what I said. Sean, I was not a fan of the questions, is my headline. But I'd love for you to start and take as much time as you want to just tell us your thoughts about the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some mixed results in here. It covered a lot of topics that I think a lot of people wanted to ask: the fracking, the flipping of the issues. So just start from the media side. 28 minutes, 4 breaks. I thought, I mean, I joked about this on Twitter, but I felt like it was back in college when I used to change the margins and make the font look bigger to make it seem longer. To me, this was, they did 4 breaks. It was a 13-minute segment, 6, and then 3. And the last one was, all fluff about their things, of their convention moments. There was a lot left on the table. I thought it wasn't just the questions, Mark. There was no follow-up, and that was fairly. I felt like it was a Sunday show would have gotten a lot more. And I felt like there was a lot gone there. I asked this to viewers on my show. The number one issue for her and for everyone has been abortion. Not one question about her stance on that. There's a lot left on the table that I don't think people got answers for. And unfortunately, I think they're going to get credit for checking the box. I thought Tim Walz's response was pretty weak, blaming other people for his misstatements. So, I mean, all in all, I think they might get credit from a lot of the folks in the media for checking a box, but I don't, I know why they're hesitant to do them. Put it that way.
Okay, Sean, thank you. Dan Turrentine, who has worked with Hillary Clinton and Speaker Pelosi and others. Dan, again, I'd love to just hear your overview of how you thought that went. You can comment on Dana's questions, or you can just talk about how you thought the vice president did.
Yeah, I thought she did well. As someone who's watched her for years, I was kind of looking at how much she has improved just on the kind of mechanics as a politician. And I think, Mark, what you've said, what Sean said, people can debate whether the question should have been harder or not. I think most interviews.
Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you really debate if the questions were hard enough? You really think those were hard questions?
I mean, look, I think it depends on how you're looking at this. I think 90% of politicians' interviews these days are in their tribal corners, and they're not hard. Like when Trump goes on
CNN says they're not MSNBC.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's not supposed to be a tribal interview.
Yeah, look, and I think she's going to have a debate. That's not going to be a tribal interview. I'm sure she'll have some more, some more press conferences. But look, one of the things that she has struggled with in the past is she historically would kind of get into it with the interviewer, right? And the first rule of politics, that you tell someone before you do it is don't talk to the interviewer, drive your messages and talk to the people on the other side of the camera. And she has struggled with that. The Lester Holt interview was kind of a great example of that. And she didn't do it. And I hear you. They were not, there wasn't a lot of hard hitting follow up, and that is going to come. But I thought, as you say, there was so much hype for this that, okay, she checked the box. She didn't put her foot in her mouth. She drove the messages. I thought the first few minutes she was clearly a little nervous. You could see it. Like, as you said, she looked down and, but I think she did okay. And
All right, Dan, let me ask you one question, and I want to see if Jim Kennedy, longtime Democratic communications pro, will tell us what he thought. Dan, tell me what you think her best moment was.
You know what? I just probably not going to be as popular on fracking. She didn't take the bait. There is no good answer on that. And I think she just she clearly had her lines. She stuck to it. She had a smile and she didn't keep talking. She just cut it off.
Okay. All right, Dan, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Stay with us. Mr. Kennedy, are you willing to weigh in? I'd love if you would, and just tell us from a communications point of view, how you thought she did, how you thought the interviewer did.
Sure. I thought Dana Bash started off fairly strong and asked some tough questions at the outset. I do think the question about President Biden could have been approached much differently, such as asking, when did you first notice his acuity issues? It's kind of a no-win question in the answer. And then it sort of went soft at the end. I was saying
soft at the end, meaning the last 95%.
Yeah, I was saying in the chat, I can only imagine what Tim Russert or Mark Halperin would have done with the same opportunity. So that may come, at least for you. I thought she probably passed the bar in terms of what they needed to achieve, but in terms of convincing undecided voters, I'm not sure that's the case. It kind of reminded me of a job interview where the people come in for the interview very prepped and a little nervous, and they kind of hit all the marks. But then the question is, do you want to work with this person for the next 4 years? And I'm not sure that test has been passed, at least by virtue of this interview.
I thought, and Jim, just because you've worked in television too, I thought the bumpers and the teases were like campaign ads.
Yeah,
I thought they were unnaturally favorable towards her. I'm wondering if you agree with that.
Oh yeah, the lead-ins and the teasers were definitely helpful from their standpoint. And again, it's not always going to be that way, but maybe it will.
Okay, I think it might be. I think that she may win the election because this is the way she's covered. Mr. Kennedy, thank you. I'm doing all Democrats at first, very purposely, and going to Hank Morris next. Hank, again, I haven't made comprehensively the list yet of all the things that weren't asked about, either at all or well. How she differs from Joe Biden, what she knew about Joe Biden's acuity decline, how she would deal with inflation, what the causes of inflation have been. I mean, there's so many that I would have prioritized more over the lovely photo of her with her young relative in front of her, or some of the other topics. But again, Hank, I'd love for you to answer how you think she did, how you think the questions were.
So I thought it was fine. I thought, from Harris's point of view, no harm, no foul. She didn't make any news, which I would have suggested that she had at least one thing that would make some news, be new or newsworthy. And it's not her fault that the questions were softballs.
Well, it's not her fault, but she chose the questioner, someone she's very comfortable with.
But as you said, it wasn't MSNBC.
Yeah.
And I think people legitimately felt that CNN was very fair in the first debate.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy that they didn't fact check the first debate.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Hank,
there were no follow-ups. That's not her fault.
Yeah.
So you could say it's a missed opportunity, but on the other hand, she definitely checked the box and on to
I agree.
listening to Jordan complain that she needs to do 5 more of these things with real people.
Right. Hank, what would you say her best moment was?
I think bashing Trump, which she did a couple of times, and I wouldn't have minded if she did it a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you, Hank. Stay with us. Sean, I'd love for you to comment on what you've heard from the Democrats who commented.
I mean, look, this gets back to what I said. I think there's general agreement. I don't think she killed it. She didn't win anyone over, but this really comes down to, I think, a check the box moment. She did what she had to do. She can say she did an interview. They can say they did her joint interview. I agree with you. I felt like I was being sold. It was more of an infomercial than an interview. But look, as I am fond of saying, I feel like we can yell at the refs all day. Look, she did what she needed to do. That's not her fault. I agree with Hank. She got to set the table on this one. Credit to their campaign for this. I mean, you have to admire it to some degree and say, if I can get away with that, would I? And the answer is yes. So I will give them credit for that. And I do think that, and we keep hearing this return, and I know Dan has said this, and I know he means it, but there's this refrain that, well, she'll do another one. Really? Why? I don't see that happening. She's definitely not going to do one before the September 10th debate. And then we're already in early voting. I mean, I will bet you that we get away with not doing another substantive interview before this campaign. And again, if I can get away with that as a campaign operative, I take it every day of the week. But it's just amazing that we are going to end up with a candidate that didn't go through a primary, that got handed a nomination, that is so concerned about democracy that they will never sit down for a real one-on-one interview with a journalist.
Okay. Thank you. Sean, stay if you can. So I'm going to do now what I said. I'm going to go through, and I'm not going to run the stopwatch if everybody adheres to 30 seconds or less. If people start to go over, I'm going to start to run the stopwatch. I want to hear from everybody who's got their hand up. We'll literally go through one by one and ask you to tell your top line thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Mark, real quick, Nicole in the chat was just asking, saying, hey, I'd like to know what Sean thinks was left on the table besides abortion. I don't think Dana actually last cycle in the midterms asked a bunch of Democrats really good questions on abortion and said, okay, what is you've gone after Republicans on this issue. What is your limit? I would have liked to have seen, considering the prominence that this issue has played, her using the same question. Where is your limit on abortion? What week is unacceptable to you? Yeah. She did it really well last cycle in the midterms to Senate candidates. I would have liked to have seen that again.
Yeah. Again, she asked about immigration, but she didn't ask it in a way that would yield anything.
Right. No, it's, I think you've always said this, and I think you're right. The way the question is framed is going to determine the answer you get. And it was not yielding the right answer or substantive answers.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through, we're going to do everybody's got their hand up. Then I want to show you some polling data and something that happened with Donald Trump today. And then we'll come back as time allows and talk in more detail about the interview. So I'm going to do a lot of pinning and unpinning here. Add my friend Ray. Ray is going to set the good example. Quickly tell us, Ray, where you are, who you're supporting. 30 seconds or less on the interview, and then we'll move on to the next person. Ray.
Well, I thought this was a master class in how not to conduct an interview. It bordered on embarrassing. To Sean's point, Waltz came off. I thought Waltz came off as disingenuous, and to Mark's point, and watching this, I kept wondering why Waltz was seated so high above the two women. That just seemed strange to me. The whole optics seemed strange to me.
It just goes to the poorness of the production. It was just cheaply done and not well done. Ray, thank you. Set a good example. Charlie, you're a Georgia voter. Tell everybody who you're supporting, and then 30 seconds or less on the interview.
Yeah, I'm down here in Atlanta and Harris supporter, and I'm lockstep. Agree with the Spice Man. She met the bar. Block and tackle, another day done. You know what I mean? I think she should avoid the interview. She should avoid is sitting down with the New York Times for that long term. Stay away from that. She gets interviews; they're going to be similar. And it's not a conspiracy with CNN. They're going to promote it to get the most likes, to get the most views, and that's what they did, and that's how they wanted to promote it.
Okay, so thank you, Charlie.
She met the bar.
Thank you. Okay. Bruce, come on in again. Tell people where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
I'm from Leesburg, Virginia. I'm supporting Trump. I will confess I did grow up in Chevy Chase, so I probably have a different view.
How far from Magruder's, Bruce?
About half a mile.
Okay, that's my standard. Go ahead.
You know where the Parkway Deli is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's where I grew up. Anyway, I just say that to show the contrast. I know I'm familiar with the contrast between the two ways of thinking. I agree with everything you said about the nature of it, but I think interview was very weak, and it'll look much weaker, especially in contrast to the very tough interview that Dana Bash did. What was it, 2 weeks ago with JD Vance? And
Yeah.
so, that just not only accentuates the different treatments, but I think a lot of people, not just as the Republican you quoted said, fired up Trump supporters, but people who were sort of maybe thinking about voting for Trump will look at that, but not sure yet. We'll look at that and say, this pushes me more interesting to Trump, especially given that Trump's doing all these very long interviews with the podcasters.
Yep.
I don't
Okay,
want to go
Bruce,
over my
thank you.
30 seconds, but
Yep. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. All right. Before we bring in Michael, Noah, can you come on mic or on camera and tell folks what you found on Twitter so far that you texted me? If not, I'll do it myself.
I can come on mic.
Okay. Noah, my colleague has been looking at Twitter. Noah, just tell people what you found.
Well, it seems fairly divided along partisan lines. The Democrats liberals are being almost sheepish, because it was such an easy interview and relatively quiet. And, conservative Twitter is destroying Dana, just absolutely destroying her.
Yeah. Okay. Not surprised. Thank you, Noah. Let us know what else you find. Michael, again, tell people where you are, who you're supporting, and I don't hear you, but you are unmuted, Michael. Can you fix your audio? You're just too low. I don't know if you can fix that. Work on that. While you work on that, Governor McCrory, who's a Republican in North Carolina, not telling us who he's supporting because he's got a show on PBS. Governor, I'll give you executive privilege to go 45 seconds if you'd like, and tell us what you thought.
I had a tougher interview when I was 32 years old, running for my first term as a Charlotte City Council member.
I think you had a tougher interview at the McDonald's drive-thru when they wanted to know you to specify which size of Diet Coke you wanted.
I would have paid for that interview or that infomercial as a mayoral candidate, as a governor, as a U.S. Senate candidate. It was an embarrassment to journalism. I don't blame the candidate, but there are so many issues they could have delved into. They had the time, and they wasted the time on production and commercials and fluff.
Governor,
And the country deserves better. The country deserves better with both sides of the aisle at this point in time.
Governor, when you say they had the time, why do you think they had the time? I'm curious
because they wasted a minute or two on a commercial at the beginning, an intro.
No. But what I'm getting at is my understanding, at least the rumors that I was getting was that they were given, all CNN did was fluff it. But they only had, this wasn't a live interview. It was taped at 1:45 or 2:45 in the afternoon.
And I was concerned about that. Yeah.
But my point is,
if you put the stopwatch on the thing, it was not very long. But I think
it was 28 minutes.
Right.
I taped it.
But 28 minutes. Give me her for 28 minutes, and I can get some news out of her. And, some accountability.
I'm just trying to get clarity.
12 minutes.
I agree with you. I think CNN needs to be honest with the public now and tell us what the parameters were and how much time they were given. This was promoted as an hour interview. It ended 10 minutes early.
Well, they didn't promote it as an hour interview. They promoted it as an hour special. I'm actually surprised how long it was. I thought they'd get less time.
Okay, it was promoted as, that's a little deceptive.
Well, they also just so you know, when it was going on, it said live, right? They promoted it as the discussion was actually happening live. That was obviously not true.
All right. Governor, stay with us. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Governor. Finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Michael, try again.
All right. You hear me?
Not that well. Not that well, Michael.
Well, here's what it is. Here's what it is.
Okay.
That's what it was.
That's good. Okay. Michael, thank you. I'm sorry.
Anybody, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Michael, thank you. Sorry, your audio is just not quite good enough. I could just almost hear you. Sam, come on in, please. Tell us again, remind folks who you're supporting, where you are, and tell us what you thought of the interview.
Yes, I'm in Texas. I have been leaning towards Trump, waiting for a reason to vote for or want to vote for Kamala, and it has not come. I agree with pretty much everything you said at the outset, Mark. But I think what stood out to me the most was the optics of Governor Waltz sitting up there, almost because he was sitting so high above her. It was almost like he was kind of watching over her. That was kind of the biggest thing. And then it was like a cheap plastic table. It didn't give me the sense of, man, this woman's going to be the president of the United States. It just didn't have that feel at all.
Yep.
But I do want to be charitable, and what I have been very impressed with Kamala Harris on is staying away from identity politics. To me, it's been so frustrating over the past 4 to 5 years to have this drive of race and gender. For myself and many other Black professionals that I work with, it is so insulting. And it's so demeaning to go into environments where we've worked hard to be where we are. And we have almost a fear of the idea that people think that we don't deserve to be there because we're being given, just being handed opportunities. And she stayed away from that.
Yep. Sam, what was her best moment for you?
I think it was the answer on when she was asked specifically about race and gender, and she said she steered away from it.
Yep.
Okay. I was
Sam,
very happy.
Thank you. Sam, thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Saleem, remind folks where you are, who you're supporting. Tell us what you thought of the interview, please.
Hello, my name is Iyad. In Roslyn, Virginia right now, originally from Long Island, but I'm supporting President Trump. I thought if she did make news, it was that she basically admitted that the Inflation Expansion Act, deceptively named the Inflation Reduction Act, was actually a backdoor to the Green New Deal that gives the President Trump's campaign something new to attack her on. It's been something that the Biden-Harris administration has been trying to hide for the 3.5 years that they've been in office. And this is further proof that the whole presidential, their whole ticket since 2020 has been driven by the Sanders wing that that lost out in the primaries. Even though it was Biden-Harris in the ticket, it was really run by Bernie Sanders and his progressive wing.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. Roger, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview, please.
Really did, and she has a lot to answer for.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that. Chris, again, remind folks or tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
Thank you, Mark. I'm in Nassau County, New York, supporting the vice president. I expected the interview tonight to be a Rorschach test, and instead it was a big, beautiful gift for the vice president. I don't expect another interview. Why bother?
Yeah. What did you think of the quality of the questions?
Why can I just what in the gift you mean that she checked the box or that she did really well?
It was a gift in that she was not pressed nearly as hard as I expected her to be by the questions. I didn't think the quality of the questions were there. I was hoping that the vice president would get a better challenge and potentially step up and meet it, and didn't really happen.
Chris, what do you think her best moment was for you?
I think I liked the way she kind of brushed off the personal attacks that were mentioned, just same old story, next question, as opposed to trying to lean into it or fight on that level.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, thank you.
Thank
Tyler, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
Thanks for having me back on. I'm in Florida.
Yes,
I'm a Trump supporter. I think Sean Spicer had more tough questions in the first 30 seconds of his first press conference than the entire hour. Look, I try to be fair. Even though I'm a Trump guy, I try to be fair. I said she had a good speech at the convention. But the visuals matter. And I think when I saw her, even before I even watched the interview, I just saw the photo. It looked like she was giving a deposition with her lawyer next to her. That's what it looked like to me. Like, I don't know why he had to be there for it. So kind of what I expected from Dana at CNN. So I wasn't surprised that it was a softball interview, but that's sort of
And
Hey, Mark.
what did you, Sean? Just want to say, Tyler, what do you think her best moment was?
I agreed with one of the previous gentlemen there. He was talking about how she stayed away from the race and the gender. I think the goal was to make sure she didn't come across as radical, right? Because that's been the fear about her. And I think if she went into that interview trying to come across as moderate, it doesn't really matter how softball the questions were. Probably mission accomplished. If you went in there thinking you were a Marxist, you didn't come out thinking.
Great point. Very strong. She clearly punched that well. Tyler, thank you. Mayhill, welcome back. Please tell everybody who you're supporting, where you are, and what you thought of the interview.
Thanks, Mark. I'm in Western Massachusetts. Probably will vote for Harris. Would have voted for Nikki Haley if she were running. Just so fried and annoyed about that hour, a waste of my time, a waste of our time. I'm guessing a lot of people in the country are going to feel that way. It reminded me of Oprah Winfrey's interview with Meghan Markle a couple of years ago. And I don't think the hour is going to bring undecided voters over to her side.
Thank you, Mayhill. All right, so I just gotten the following information. Sean may have this in his inbox too. It's a breakdown of the interview. 16 minutes and 29 seconds. Just trying to understand this chart now. Day one agenda: economy, fracking, immigration, policy changes, which you appoint a Republican. Question about race, Israel, Biden competency, and dropping out the photograph. Those were the topics covered. And there's a breakdown of how much on each. I'm going to study this a little bit more, but again, some of those are the right topics, but not to my mind, and many people here so far, including Harris supporters, not necessarily the right questions asked the right way. Warren, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
Yes, I'm in San Domingo, Dominican Republic. I came from Florida. I voted in Florida. I spent part of my time there. I'm voting for Harris. I thought the interview was surprisingly softball. I mean, I thought that Dana Bash would, given the the debate, would be harder. I think that Harris cruised through nicely. I wanted to see no harm. No harm was done. In fact, I think it was a big plus for her. So I was pleased as a partisan Harris.
Yeah. What do you think what was her best moment for you?
I think when she parried the question about race, that she just did that really well, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Warren, thank you. James, remind everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
James in Japan, supporting Harris. I was pleased if I can channel Tim Hogan, if the top line out of this is CNN is biased. I'm fine with that. She cleared the bar. As a Harris supporter, I was nervous of who I would see, whether it was going to be word salad or whether she could do a semi-unscripted moment. And I thought, Mark, I disagree with you. I thought the answer on the fracking or the flip-flopping was classic David Bluff. I thought she did a good job, stuck with the values, evaded the question, and it gave me confidence that she'll be able to go through harder interviews. I thought this was soft. That's what it was supposed to be. And
when you say that's what it's supposed to be, when you say that's what it was supposed to be, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, they held off interviews for all this time, and whoever they were going to give it to, I figured it was going to have to be with kid gloves. And I'm not surprised. For me,
we have real conversations here. Again,
yeah.
I've known Dana for years. For years. She's done tough interviews, as Sean points out. She's done some tough interviews with Democrats. So how could the Democrats in selecting her have been confident that it would be a soft interview?
I figured that since whoever was going to get this had to be careful, they probably had some guidance on how they had to handle it. I figured it was going to be soft. I was not surprised that this was not. I just wasn't.
I'll tell you what I think about your critique of the fracking answer and it being fluffy. And I agree with you on the framing of it. My values have never changed. I got more information. Whatever. It was the execution, because it was the most word salady of all of her answers. There's one other that I think was word salady. So to me, the reason why that was not a good answer is because one of the things she needs to avoid, besides laughing inappropriately, which she did do, is word salad. And I think that was right out of Veep, as John Podhoretz
From
pointed
my
out.
concerns of the prior version of word salad, this was a lot more polished. I was relieved.
Yeah,
by it.
I
was
agree.
relieved.
I
by
agree.
it.
I
That's
agree.
what I'll say.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But again, I think she did fine. And so I think overall she did just fine. Thank you, James.
Mark,
Domo arigato gozaimasu. Ohio
Arigato
gozaimasu.
gozaimasu.
Ja mata sayonara. Shansan. Domo arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you.
Dozo.
I think
Dozo.
one theme that keeps getting talked about, and this is probably the only forum that will discuss this, but it's gotten brought up over and over again. It's coming up in the chat, is the optics. And I think part of what she was trying to communicate in this is to look presidential. I've heard people in the chat call this a parent-teacher conference. Someone called it a deposition. The way that she was seated. Those things for people who are going to consume this, not just who consumed it live, but later, I fair or not, I'm just telling, like, the reality is that the optics matter. And I think that, to your point, Mark, it's CNN, they've got their piece of this, but the campaign let her down tonight. The idea that that's the visual that they let come across, I think does not speak well to her team. To let her go into that setting, it didn't look, it just didn't look good. And it looked like her dad.
If you choose to do an interview with basic cable, you're going to get a basic cable look.
Right. But that's my point, though, is that this looked like her dad came to a deposition with her, or a parent-teacher conference, as several people have noted in the chat. It did not look like someone who was trying to say, I'm ready to be president of the United States and I can look presidential.
Yep. Okay, Sue, take your 30 seconds. Remind folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and tell us what you thought.
I'm in Colorado. Go Buffs. They're on TV right now, so I'm splitting my attention. I'm voting for Harris. I did not pay as much attention to the optics as everybody else is. I was looking more at the content. When Biden was at the debate, I was literally pulling my hair out and screaming at the TV. I didn't do that tonight. I thought it was fine. Do no harm. I was very pleased with it. It's not her fault if they were softball questions. I think she was damned if she did it, damned if she didn't do it. No matter what happens, the criticisms that we're hearing right now will come out. Whether they were hardball, softball, it would have been the same. People were going to criticize her on one side or like her on the other.
Okay, Sue, thank you. Jeff, stand by for a second. So I've been wondering how newspaper headline writers were going to write a lead off of this, because really, unless you want to just attack the questioner, I don't know. So New York Times, in first major interview, Harris vows to, quote, turn the page on the last decade. All right, so that's the best they could do. Washington Post is even more hilarious. Harris Waltz give key interview on CNN. I think maybe they're still mulling over how to come up with a lead there. All right, Jeff, tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview, please.
Yeah, hey, Mark. Good to be back. I'm a Trump supporter from Minneapolis. I think one of two Trump supporters here that you've had on this forum.
Yes, sir.
I may have to pen pal with the other one. As others have said, the optics were a big thing. I actually had the audio off for about half of it just because I had kids in the living room. And the analogy that kept on coming to me was a kid sitting at the adult table. It just did not come across, presidential. But there's two things that baffle me real quick. One, her best moment was her very pointed and very specific response to the race question. But then two, when she was asked the day one question, we got some rambling, opportunity, middle class, blah, blah, blah. She knew both questions were coming. How she didn't have a better answer for that latter one, I don't understand that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I will tell you, and this is not something I'm critical of Dana, because people do it all the time. I find the what would you do on day one question to be the most ridiculous question. Like, who cares what you do on day one? It's just such a silly gimmick to me. I don't know why people keep asking it, but I thought I'm sure that she expected it because it always gets asked. But I thought that was kind of a weak answer. But again, it was fine. Jacqueline, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
I'm in San Diego, California. I'm still voting for Harris because I already thought that both candidates were empty suits in different ways. And Harris, I think, is smarter than Trump, but she doesn't have convictions as much as Trump. So it's pretty similar in terms of emptiness of candidates. And I just thought I just thought her answer to why she suddenly flip-flopped was just not presidential at all, because she said that her values haven't changed and avoided it. She could have just simply said, you have to govern from the center because that's what's practical, like Carter did. And that would have sounded much more like someone with convictions who can govern. I just think that would have been a better answer, but might not have made her seem centrist enough or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I got a question. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this. I haven't had time to look because I came straight here. She said she sort of acknowledged she opposed fracking in 19, but then she said in 20 she was for fracking. Is it, Sean, do you know, is that true? What is that a reference to?
That's to the vice presidential debate, I believe.
Vice presidential debate. All right.
That was how I interpreted it, because she was followed up on.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Mr. Hunt, welcome back. I like to see you on the move always, but tell everybody whether you're moving or not. Well, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
I'm from Ohio. I'm supporting Trump. And just from an average American perspective, it's like, how can you trust the media? It's like, I'm like very disappointed. It's like, it's hard to watch. It's like I don't believe anything anymore, for real. That's pretty much all I got to say.
Okay. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Come back often. So again, Sean, I know you put yourself in your position of your former Trump colleagues. Axios writes up the interview. Vice President Harris sounded like the Democrat she's trying to succeed as president in tonight's CNN interview. Open to fracking, ready to crack down on the southern border, and dismissive of Medicare for all. I find it all kind of hilarious. All right, let's see. Bruce, right? We're on Bruce. I see a lot of hands added once I open the bazaar here, so we may not get to everybody, but we'll keep going through. Bruce. Did we already do Bruce? Bruce, did you already go? No, hold on. Bruce, did you already go?
Yes, you already called on me. So
that's what I thought. All right, sorry about that. I thought so. I just scrambling a little here. Josh, I know we didn't go to Josh. Josh, for the folks who are new, and we have a lot of new folks on YouTube. Where are you? Who are you supporting, and what do you think of the interview?
I'm in North Carolina. I'm supporting Trump. I think if one thing the interview did, I think it destroyed the mystique of Tim Walz. I think he was by far the biggest loser of the night in the interview.
Because?
Well, just the way that he answered those questions. I was actually shocked at how poorly he answered the questions. I figured he would do a lot better than she did.
Yeah.
He only had a couple moments where I thought,
but he wilted under the very aggressive follow-up questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't real impressed with him, so I'm hoping that whole thing's going to go away now. Maybe the mystique or whatever it is.
All right, Josh. Thank you. Pete is my friend from California, who's a Trump supporter. Pete, I know you love the interview. Tell us why.
She didn't project the gravitas I would have hoped to have seen from a presidential candidate. You know, if you imagine Hillary in that role, she would have projected more heft, more gravitas, somebody you can see on the world stage with Putin or Xi. Also, she didn't really project the command of the issues, particularly in foreign policy. It was more of a headline, kind of a fluff answer on the foreign policy front. And finally, on the fracking answer, she didn't project that she had a conviction towards her new answer. It was more like, hey, my values are constant, and I can change the underlying policy to meet whatever new thing comes up. So if I was a person really big on the fracking, I wouldn't feel very good about her not changing her mind again after her election.
Yeah,
Great, Pete,
I
thank
think
you.
that fallback of referring to my values all the time seemed like a crutch. I was like, wait a second, if your values are that you care about the environment or, family, and then you say, if my values haven't changed, well, clearly they have, because you now allow it. And it just, I found it to be, goes back to the lack of follow-up. I was like, I don't understand. If your values haven't changed, then explain what did change.
Well, she gave her the opportunity to say, new science or
Right.
Putin,
Oh,
the
no, no,
threat,
it
the
couldn't have
threat
been a
of
better
Putin.
lead-in.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Mike. Tell
Yes.
everybody who doesn't know where you are, who you're supporting, what you thought of the interview.
Yes, Mark, I love your program. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and I had planned to vote for one of the third-party candidates, but that interview may be what causes me to vote for Trump, because this is an unholy alliance between journalism and one of our political parties that may be more dangerous than any of the complaints about Trump.
Yeah. Mike, let me ask you this. Stay longer, and I want to ask you this because I'm struck by what you said. What if somebody said to you, I thought the questions were good. I thought they were fair, and they gave the vice president an opportunity, and she pressed her on several occasions. What would you say to someone who took that position?
Somebody who would take that position hasn't been reading the newspapers, hasn't been following the issues for the past 10 years, hasn't been following what's been going on with this administration. It's not that everything has been wrong with this administration, but there's enough wrong with it where the vice president should be able to answer much better and much more deeply. And this flip-flopping that she's done, not challenged enough at all.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, thank you. Striking position to take. Grateful to you. All right. We're gonna bring in the two Katies, not the same two Katies as the other night, but nonetheless two Katies, and ask the two Katies to weigh in. Then I want to run through some of the polling and other news of the day, and then if we have time to come back, we'll get to the folks who didn't get in already with your hands up. But Katie Johnson, tell people where you are, who you're supporting in the presidential race, which might be news because you shift around a little bit.
I do shift.
And then tell us what you thought of the interview.
I am in Louisiana and was a reluctant Trump voter in 2016 and 2020. And I mean, I wanted Haley for this one. And that has not happened. But I guess at this point it would have to be a reluctant Trump. Only I just can't deal with the lack of substance. I mean, I sat there and listened and put our kids to bed early to try to hear it all, and it was such a letdown. I mean, it's kind of like you go under the tree at Christmas and there's just nothing there, and you have nothing to unwrap, and it was just frustrating. Like the starting off with the word salad, with the fracking question, and even after being pushed, it was like, why can't you just answer? And then I didn't really understand the purpose of walls. Like I know that I feel like that was probably more of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because like if he would have, swooped in and talked more, it would have been like he was overpowering. But I thought he was awkward. I agree with the optics that like he looked strange looking down on them, and like just the whole setup was off. And then the fact that he just totally disregarded the answer to her question or answering her question. It just didn't, none of it really made sense. I mean, I did like that she was more serious than I expected. But to Pete's point, I mean, she did not have the Hillary Clinton vibes.
Yeah.
Like
Katie, thank you.
Not the same.
Thank you, Katie. All right, Katie McGann, tell us again, for folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what you thought of the interview.
Yeah, I'm in Oregon and voting for Trump. The interview tonight, I'm sad for our country. I think that I'm hearing a lot of people that are saying it was good enough, and I think how sad that was good enough. I think Harris was fine if you don't know much about her previous statements. I'm also hearing, praise for Harris staying away from identity politics, which I think is interesting because I feel like they've been using Waltz as their conduit to continue the identity politics between his, oh, I don't spice my food. And tonight it was, my wife says I'm not good at grammar. And I don't like that. It's giving me the ick.
Yeah.
And if I was a man, I would be very turned off.
Katie, thank you. We love when you come, so please come back regularly. Appreciate it. All right, Sean, I want to run through a few things and get your reaction. First of all, bunch of national polls out today, and some swing state polls that basically show the race tied for the most part. Let's look first at Wall Street Journal national poll if we can, and also has some interesting issue questions. So The horse race there is basically tied. Do we have the journal poll? All right. I'll wait another moment. If we have it, we have it. There's a national Quinnipiac poll also shows the race tied. Bloomberg has a bunch of swing state polls. All right, here's the journal poll. This is not the horse race. The horse race is basically tied. But here is the who's better describes Harris or Trump. Will stand up for workers, basically tied. I'd say that's good for Trump. Experience to lead the country. Trump's ahead, but not by very much. I'd suspect that's good for Harris, in my view. Would bring about change, basically tied. Has the right temperament. Harris does much better. Sean, anything strike you on that?
No, although I would love to see how that last question gets asked again, how tonight might change it. I like I said, I don't think she really did any big favors for herself looking presidential.
Yeah. Again, the journal, I forget who's actually ahead, but it's basically tied. Do we have the Quinnipiac poll? All right. So there's the journal poll. This is interesting because they plotted it against the Biden. So you can see Biden was ahead in late 22. Trump plunged too. Then Trump took the lead in late 23 after Afghanistan. You see the change there, but in 23 he goes ahead. And then you see Harris now a little bit ahead in the journal poll. Quinnipiac poll, if we can put that up, please. Quinnipiac national poll, again, basically shows the race tied. All right, here we go. So this is some issues from the Quinnipiac poll. Again, has the race tied. Hope people can read this. To me, most of this is good for Harris. Who do you think would do a better job? Crime, even. That's got to drive Trump crazy. Russia, Ukraine war, even. It's kind of a wash. Skip down. Israel, Harris, a little bit better for Trump. Immigration, Trump only up by 5, got to drive him crazy. Economy, Trump up 6, got to drive him crazy. Inflation, Trump up 7. Again, those are better than Biden was doing, but maybe not good enough to win. All right, forget the Bloomberg polls were just swing state polls again, kind of just a big jumble showing they're competitive. Trump did 2 things today on reproductive freedom. One is he came out for free IVF for everybody. And the other is he took a position against or in favor of a ballot measure in Florida where he lives, saying that they would do away with the state's ban after 6 weeks. The campaign later tried to clarify that Trump didn't necessarily say he was supporting the measure, but let's play that soundbite. And before you play it, hopefully don't hit play yet. My sense is whenever Trump is shown polling data that shows he could lose the election on abortion, he comes up with something like he did a few days ago when he said, "I'll be great for reproductive freedom." So watch him, substance and body language in this interview.
You overturn,
everyone does.
You
I think
overturn
everyone
Roe,
does, yeah.
and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
You overturn.
Okay, so the pro-life community is very upset with this, and we're upset when he said the thing about how he'd be great for reproductive freedom. Sean, what's going on here with your old boss and abortion rights and reproductive freedom?
Well, a couple things. I wonder. I think up until he ran, he was fairly well known as a pro-choice guy. I think, and to your point, I think he thinks this is going to be a major issue, which I don't disagree with. So he recognizes the sensitivity of this issue. However, I think leaning into these issues today, the 6-week ban and the IVF, is going to cost him significant. You have Lila Rose, the pro-life action leader, and Randall Terry, who Democrats are trying to get on the ballot in key states. This look, for an election that comes down to thousands of votes in handfuls of states, I think this is bad. This is it. It doesn't keep a key part of the Republican/conservative base excited. This was key to his victory last time with the judges, and he's undermining it. I just these are unforced errors right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Sean, some people said to me he was silly to do it on this day because he was going to step on a bad Harris interview. I don't know that it was a bad Harris interview. Maybe he did it today to kind of bury it a little bit because he assumed it won't get very much attention. Is that possible?
No, I think he got asked the question and he could have punted. I mean,
well, but he did do the IVF thing today.
Right. No, but I think, yes. I mean, the interview there with Dasha at NBC, I think, I mean, I would have kept him dark and just let her run the day and said, hey, let's see how she does. But again, you're right. This was just, it's not helpful. He's said his piece on this issue, and I think trying to make it, he's just digging a hole that didn't need to be dug.
Yeah. All right. Let me tell folks about something that's happening tomorrow. First of all, Sean, Tim, and I will be here at 9 a.m. Eastern for the morning meeting. We'll talk more about the interview, and we'll be sampling overnight reaction and take more of your questions. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time, special episode of Two Way with a poll that David Burrell, who I hope can, at least, if he can't come on camera, at least can talk to me. David Burrell, Wick Insights, our partner here at Two Way, did a poll. David, tell everybody what the poll we're going to be unveiling at 4 o'clock tomorrow, what it is.
Hey, Mark, thanks. Yeah, we did a poll in Pennsylvania. We have 1,500 completes, and we're measuring, post the Kennedy endorsement of Trump and post him dropping out of the race, what's it looking like in Pennsylvania. We got a lot of interesting things also going on in the questions we're asking. So I think we'll be, a lot of interesting things we'll talk about tomorrow.
Yeah. So lots of interesting results. I'll tell you one thing we tested is what if you swap the running mates? What if you made it Trump with Haley? And what if you added Shapiro to the ticket instead of Waltz? So we'll have results on that. And also David's found some interesting things about response rates among certain demographic groups, which could be insight into what's going on with other people's surveys. David will be here to talk about the poll at 4 Eastern. We also have 3 of the other best pollsters in America. So it's a covey of 4 of the best pollsters you'll hear from. Patrick Ruffini, who's a Republican pollster, who's excellent. Ann Seltzer, who's been on here many times, who's the pollster in Iowa, who's a nonpartisan pollster, and Celinda Lake, who is one of the Biden-Harris team, and now the Harris team's pollster. So all 4 pollsters. We'll talk about our poll, and there haven't been very many polls of this size and quality from Pennsylvania for whatever reason, and Pennsylvania is the most important state. So I'm looking forward to the 4 pollsters kicking that poll around, and then we'll take questions from everybody about polling generally. We did a little bit of that the other day, and I know there's always a great deal of interest in methodology and of how people are interpreting the current data. So 4 o'clock Eastern time, if you're interested in the polling, and we'll send the poll around. If you're on my Substack list, we'll send it around. We'll put some of it on Twitter as well. But it's a great opportunity to get a first look at what I think is going to be a pretty compelling poll of the battleground state. David, anything else you want to say?
No, like you said, we're testing, different hypothetical ballots, and again, as a teaser, Shapiro did, if in Pennsylvania, obviously he would have performed well as the VP pick. And then we also have a lot of interesting things on the issues and also on the methodology and why we've seen the polling go, from Trump +7 nationally, 8 weeks ago to, Harris up now. So we'll talk about that all tomorrow.
Great. David, thank you. Looking forward to it. Sean, do you want to ask David anything as a little tease? Or you just want to say how much you're looking forward to it?
No, I'm actually excited to see the results. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for all the talk. I've never been a big believer in VP, so I will be excited to see what the switcheroo looks like.
David, whose idea was that switcheroo question?
That was yours, Mark.
Okay,
that was a good one.
A little credit. Just
a little credit.
It's
very interesting, and there's so some fun results tomorrow.
One note, and I know we'll talk about it in the morning meeting tomorrow, Mark, but Trump has a rather robust schedule tomorrow, capping it off in DC at Moms for Liberty tomorrow night. I think how he reacts to this debate. I mean, you asked about the IVS situation.
Interview.
Yeah, so sorry.
That's okay. I do it all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't stay up this late usually.
Yeah.
So my point is that I think that the question going into Labor Day weekend is, what does he say that might, pro or con, change the narrative? And I think that we'll see how this does.
Yeah. If you want a little behind the scenes of Sean, he does the morning meeting, takes a 2-hour nap, gets up, does some podcast thing, bed by 7 o'clock most nights. So we appreciate
That's on a long,
you
that's a late night.
I know. Appreciate Sean joining us and David, and we'll see David tomorrow at 4 Eastern.
Yes, we
appreciate everybody who weighed in, including Hank and Mr. Kennedy and Dan. Sorry didn't get to everybody, but we cycled through a lot of folks, and I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody who had their hand up. I'm grateful for you to joining. We'll see you again 9 a.m. tomorrow Eastern time, morning meeting, 4 o'clock two-way with the Pennsylvania poll and 4 of the best pollsters in America. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Good night.